getting easy to use, powerful tools in the hands of non-degreed people is the future of mental health delivery systems in the United States. And that's not my words. That's the words of the head of clinical psychology at University of Virginia, where I live. Okay. So those who are in the know recognize that licensed mental health care professionals, they are not going to be the answer. It's a numbers game.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to Something for Everybody. My name is Aaron Mashbitz. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I love being here.
Yeah, man, pumped to talk to you again. I got a lot of questions to ask you. I feel like we're very like-minded individuals, so I'm excited to hear your insights on all of these things. But before we roll into that, my first question is, how are you doing? Like, actually, how are you doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm a little low energy today, and that happens. And I think that the change of the clocks, the change of the season, all of that, and life stressors, I feel it. And, I want to be open about that because people think, oh, if you're in this business of, resilience and mental health and sport performance, you're perfect. No, that's not true.
Yeah, that's very true. I was talking to a group of teachers yesterday, and it's very rare that the people that are helping the people that we care about most, like our kids, get asked how they're doing, like the practitioners or the coaches or the therapists or whoever it is, whoever's at the top, sort of trying to give this valuable information to our children. We rarely think about their mental health or their state of being. And ultimately, it's the most important thing because they're the role model. They're the person giving the information. So if they can embody these traits that we wish to pass on to our children, that's really important. And if they can be open and honest, because we all know that every day we don't feel our best, but we give our best regardless because that's what we have in the tank. And being honest about that, I think, is extremely important.
Well, it is. And I remember two things on that. First off, from our baseball, connection here. I played baseball in college for the listeners who don't know me. And, I love the sport and I love just athletes in general. And I remember reading something that Nolan Ryan said. So this is, greatest pitcher of all time, perhaps. And he said, of 10 outings, just any 10 outings, he's like, maybe 2 of those I will feel really good. The rest of it, you got to go out there and do the best you can with what you got there. And I don't know what coping skills he had or what tools he was using. And then flipping over though to the teachers, in my efforts to try to bring some really cool tools into public school systems, I did a little research. I was looking for data. Sure enough, lots of things have been studied, and it's very, very clear that when teachers are stressed to their limits, the kids in the classroom don't learn very well. They're just, it's really very, very clear. So it's really, really, really important for our people who are in front of our kids to be supported and given some tools to really just get through this journey of life, as we call it.
Absolutely. I mean, I've shared this example before, but it makes sense for this conversation and you'll appreciate it, right? If you have a baseball coach who's coaching a 12, 13-year-old team and something in the field happens, an error, a mistake, whatever, and the words coming out of his mouth are like, hey, it's all right, but he grabs the bucket of baseballs and throws it into the dugout, right? And then the inning turns over and maybe his kid has a bad at bat and he comes back into the dugout and he throws his bat. And the coach get mad at him for throwing his bat. Hey, why'd you throw your bat? And then maybe he's at home with his mom and, she tells him to do some chores. And he's like, I don't want to. And he yells and he screams and he throws his, whatever. It's like, where are you learning all of this information? Where are you learning this stuff? Well, my coach is my role model and that's what he's presenting. And he's telling me one thing, but he's showing me another. And that's really what's important. Like, what are the actions that you're showing to embody the traits that you wish your kids to portray? And I always learned that from baseball. And thankfully, I had amazing coaches who showed me how to be a man, how to handle my emotions, how to do those things. And so I think that's really important in regards to coaches and teachers and all of that stuff that, we just talked about.
Well, definitely. Thank you for bringing that up. A couple things came to mind, and we'll just roll with this. There is the actions, and then there is our actions that are really reflective of what's truly in the heart or the DNA or whatever we want to call it, the core, the spirit of the person. And my point there is that kids are and animals can sniff out a fake, right, pretty easily. And so even if one is doing, like you say, they're saying the right words, even if they're kind of doing maybe quote the right thing, it's more effective for everybody and more genuine and more alignment if that inner core really has been worked on. I'll say somebody who's done some work. I was just at an event for the American Baseball Coaches Association as an attendee here in the D.C. area. I live outside Washington, D.C., and it was at the University of Maryland. And I'm just going to give a plug here for their head coach, Matt Swope. Matt's first-year head coach there, but he's been with Maryland for many years as an assistant. And as soon as I just saw the guy and he started to speak within 5 seconds, I was like, this guy's different. I love this guy. There's something about him. And I just kept listening, and he presented things that were outside of the norm of traditional baseball coaching at a high level, any level. And that was a breath of fresh air. And so the combination of, his demeanor plus his topic just led me to speak to him later. And I said, I hope this, I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn here. I just said, I feel like you've worked on yourself because you're uncommon here. You're so genuine and you're loving. And I spoke to some of his players, at least one of them, and they truly love this man. And it's because he loves them. And so everything that he says just comes out as what it is, authentic. So again, for all of us out here, man, being a human, not easy. And if we can learn the rules of the game a little bit, though, and work on our inner selves, I think it does become easier. And I'll leave it at that.
I got goosebumps from you sharing that story about that coach just now, because I mean, it's just so powerful what one coach or one person can do for the whole trajectory of just one person's life. I mean, it's like you can't actually put it into words. And so that's super powerful. And pump for Maryland. Hopefully they do great things for college
I'm making
baseball.
a prediction, Final Four World Series. I'm no pressure, Coach Swope, but that's what I see here.
Heck yeah. But I do want to ask you about baseball. Since that's sort of where both of us got our chops. I mean, that's where I learned everything about life. That's where I learned how to become, a man. And so maybe this is a hard question to distill it into a short version, but what did baseball teach you, and what do you hope that the young people that are maybe in sports today can learn and take into life?
Yeah. Wow. That's a good one. Baseball kind of propelled me in a long trajectory. And that's the benefit of getting older is we can look back and start to see it a little more clearly through a lens that may be more focused in a different paradigm, which is more spirit level, more bigger picture. And so my story in baseball that really helped me get going and what I do now is one of disappointment, really, which is that I wanted to be a professional player and I didn't get there. It wasn't because of a lack of physical skills or physical body, etc. And I always make the joke, I don't look like it today, but I was a strong, fast guy on the field. And I would be scouted and people would say, wow, okay, keep your eye on Fox. they'd come back. Oh no, rip it up. He's not, he's not the guy. And it would be because of a lack of consistency. And so the consistency was a function of the mental and emotional side of me. And back in, the 80s when I was playing, there was nobody talking like that. Steve Carlton, maybe in the corner of the dugout meditating, would be the only guy who was overtly addressing mental health issues. And I didn't say that I was diagnosed with anything. I just wasn't consistent because of and then we can fill in the blank. I don't know, lack of resiliency, understanding, awareness, right actions, coping skills, etc. And so roll the clock forward. As my kids got to the age of Little League, and my daughter was one of those great girls who, would play with the boys, I was going to be her coach and the coach of the rest of the team. I just thought, well, what could I deliver? I know I can deliver the game piece. I've been, played and coached and do all sorts of stuff. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to dive into the mental and emotional stuff. And that really got me going. So again, what did baseball teach me? Well, it kind of launched me. It's that yin yang sign of the black and the white, wrapped together, and they both need each other. So the failure, the success, and all these two sides of the same stick that we go through life with. That was a huge part of my life and still continues to be. And beyond that, kind of more on a practical level, or not practical, but classic level. One of the proudest things of my baseball career did teach me a great lesson. And the proud thing was when I got to college, I realized that I couldn't really throw like a college catcher. I just didn't have the arm, the skills, or whatever it may be. And so I was fortunate enough to get exposed to a couple of people. One was a scout in high school, now that I think about it, who told a story of some guy who wanted to improve his arm back in the 30s or 40s. And he would stand in center field and take a bucket of balls and try to throw it over the backstop from, dead center. So that you're hurling the ball if you can do that. There are some guns out in the world who can do that, stand at home plate and throw it into the outfield stands. That wasn't me. But I did say to myself, well, that's a formula. I may try that. I didn't until I got to college. And then I met somebody there who was at the time, the pitching coach for the St. Louis Cardinals. His name was Mike Rourke. And Mike was a catcher in his day, a minor league catcher. And he showed me some stuff. And so then I combined the two, and I did get my bucket of balls in the summertime, solo in the heat of Virginia, and I loved it. And I would just go out there by myself at the local high school, throw the balls from center field, go pick them up, do another round, pick them up, then throw as a catcher, get at home plate, put it like a bag on top of second base, try to hit it a bunch of times. And I did that, I'd say every other day, the entire summer. And when I came back to school in the fall, I was, getting on the field with the team for the first time, and I threw the ball, and the coach looked at me. He's like, Foxy. He was just chewing his tobacco. He just couldn't even speak. He's like, that's a great throw. And because he was just seeing that I had changed. I had done something different, and he had not seen that before out of me. And so, the great lesson there is, be aware of what a state of your body or mind might be. Get a plan, execute it, and enjoy the fruits of it.
Yeah. Was there ever a time after you stopped playing baseball that you resented the game or didn't like the game, or was there always a positive look towards baseball and your playing career?
That is a great question. I think I still have a little bit of a negative tinge about the game, and not because of my state in the game. I think that I hark back for days when it was less regimented, less industrialized. I'm speaking a lot of the kids less travel teams. In fact, there was no such thing. Maybe there was a travel team, when I was around. I don't think so. And I look at it now as perhaps a disrespect of the individual. What I mean is that there's not as much figuring things out on one's own. Go to the field with your buddy. I used to go out there with my friends, just a couple guys, and we would no coaching, nothing. Just go out there, throw, hit, talk. And I don't see a lot of that anymore. What I see more is structured stuff of batting lessons and travel teams and a lot of adult interaction. And I see that a lot less happy people in the game as kids. Yeah, you could say they're playing better these days. Maybe, I'm not sure. And I'm disappointed in that regard. The game itself, I think, is amazing. There's something magical about baseball. It's just, I used to use this quote long ago. I'll keep using it. Sparky Anderson once said it was the greatest game ever created by mankind. Okay, we'll go with that, Sparky. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a lot of feelings on what you just said about sort of youth baseball, about youth baseball, youth sports. And I tend to agree with you. I coach a 15U team right now, and I think at that age, right, when they're about to they're in high school and they're moving in that direction, like it can ramp up to become a little bit more serious. But when I was with the 12-year-old team, I saw 8, 9, and 10-year-old teams where it was way too serious. Way too serious. Like, I don't understand at that point why there's rankings, why there's showcases, why you're traveling for tournament. Like, what are you doing? At this age, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you're trying to have a young person fall in love with something. Like, baseball isn't always fun. Like, we know that from playing it for a long time. But if you fall in love with the game at 8, 9, 10, because you're watching the major leagues, you're watching college baseball, you're going out and play with your friends, even though you're not very good at it, you're like, I just love it. Like, and then when you do get to a serious point in your life, maybe when you're 15 and 16, you're trying to try out for varsity and things don't go the way you want them to go, you're still going to keep going because you've already had this past 3 or 4 or 5 years where you just fell in love with the game. But if it becomes a job, quote unquote, when you're 8 years old, you're done. You're finished by 11. Also because your parents are taking it too seriously. Everyone's taking it too seriously. And then you're someone who just doesn't want to play the game anymore. And that's a tragedy for kids to fall out of youth sports before they're even at the age of 13. That's a tragedy for everyone, for our whole civilization, for the lessons that could be learned, for the teamwork, the communication, the cooperation, not just being good at a sport. That's like the least important thing, but like all the other things that you can get, the intangible aspects of playing youth sport. And I think that has to be overemphasized way more than how many teams can I create for my organization so we can make more money, so we can go to more tournaments, so we can hire shitty coaches who don't even care about their kids, who are transactional rather than transformational, and all of these things. And like, and so, and then it goes back to this idea that Jonathan Haidt writes in his book, The Coddling of the American Mind, where he talks about the reason kids have the mental health issues that they do is because they have too much structured play, just like you talked about. That's like the number one thing. And so if we can have unstructured play where they just go out and they play kickball, or they play spike ball, or they grab a ball and they throw it around, or they do whatever. Like, we tried to do that when we had 12 and 13-year-olds. We tried to just say, hey, this is where you go play crazy baseball. You run the ball you ride the bases in different directions. You go play flag football, and we're not involved. Just go have fun, be yourself. And then what you see from these kids is that they're such good athletes. They can move, and they have agility, and they can create teams, and they have captains, and there's a leader, and like, you're not doing anything. And then you put them in a game setting and you as a mental skills coach, that you want them to play that way, that free, that loose, that energetic. And so these things start to happen as you move in that direction. And so, just like anything in in our world, it gets taken over by how much money can you make. But
Yeah.
with youth
Well,
sports, we're talking about our little people, our kids who are going to take over the world. Like, we can treat them better. We really can,
well, you're right, man. There's so much in here. Gosh, that I think that first off, I've been coaching youth sports. I'm not an active coach anymore, but I started when I was a teenager, believe it or not, because my dad was a enthusiast of coaching youth sports. He coached football and baseball, and so I would be his assistant coach, and I'd be coaching kids that were, a year or two younger than me, and continued to do that even before I had kids, before I was married. Just continued to coach, and there is a marked, noticeable difference between the kids of that era, and this would be, late 80s, 90s, even early 80s, and both physically and otherwise. I'll give you something on the physical, because even though I like to specialize in the non-physical things of the mental and emotional and spiritual things here, the body is important. And there's been a great degradation of the body over the past, and you can fill in the blank on that one, even 10 years, but 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And I'm not the first one to say this. Back I think it was in the 60s, they were having studies saying, why aren't our kids like they were in the 40s? And so this has been going on for quite a while, and there's lots of reasons. But to my point, one measure of that was when we have a team of 20 kids, let's say on a football team, maybe like 2 or 3 just couldn't do a good push-up or even close to it. It just didn't have the requisite strength to do that. Now it is reversed. If you have 20 kids, you'll have 2 or 3 that can do a good push-up. And so we've had a big problem here. And then you heap on the expectations through, playing baseball in any sport almost year round. Definitely for baseball, we've got a spring, summer, fall mentality these days all around the country. And if these kids don't have the physical tools to move in kind of basic human movement patterns, we'll call them, and we can, I'm going into a different rabbit hole on this one, but it's important, then they are going to have problems in baseball, and they're going to get injured, and they're going to have, mental anguish alongside of that. And so we really are mind, body, spirit. And it's important for us as coaches to use the sport as a platform, right? So back to what you said is like, we got coaches who are really just teaching baseball, trying to get the best baseball skills. And that's insufficient at any level. Back to University of Maryland. Oh, he understands this so beautifully. You can just see it, that it goes well beyond baseball. And that requires another set of tools and experiences for coaches. And then, the unstructured stuff. Oh boy, how important. And, we're living in kind of a fear-based world right now. And so as a parent, how many of you are willing to let your kids go outside for hours at a time and not know where they are? And I caught the tail end of that when I was a kid. We did used to do that. And until one day, I don't know what happened, but my mom got scared. And, she came looking for us all around the neighborhood in just kind of a panic almost, as I remember. And now here's the funny thing after that. It's not like we couldn't go out anymore. It was just that we had to leave a note as to where we were going. We still got to go out and for hours without parents around or any adults. And that just does not happen these days. Almost never do I see kids walking around the neighborhood like we used to in a group of us, going out into the woods and throwing rocks and doing stuff that parents don't want you to do. But that is exactly what kids should be doing, because it allows for all of these neurons and things and spiritual connections with the woods and all this stuff to happen. And it is going around. I'll be quiet in one moment here, but it is going on in other parts of the world. If you go into Europe, I think it's in Denmark especially, they have schools that are outdoor based schools, and they give kids, um, this would be like in the Rudolf Steiner Waldorf schools. In Europe, at least, they give kids tools like a knife and a shovel, and they say, hey, you're 10 years old, you're going to go build a fort, or you're going to build something that we need, make it a real practical experience for them. And I know you've talked about before that we as humans, we need a purpose, So
Yeah.
I said a lot there.
Well, I mean, I specifically brought you on to hear you say a lot of things, so
Good.
it's all good. But speaking of coaches, like I think coaches they do have a hard time. So I don't want to single out the coaches, right? Because all coaches have a ton going on. Like, before strength and conditioning, before there was PT, before there was mental skills, like the head coach did everything. He was all things. He was the speed and agility. He was the personal trainer. He was the coordinator. He was the recruiter. He was everything. And I get that. So that's really hard. And a lot of coaches who've been coaching for a really long time still have that sort of mentality.
Oh, yeah.
And I get when things are your baby, you don't want to delegate because you feel like that person you give it to is not going to give the same effort that you're giving. And I totally get that. I feel a lot that with relinquishing some stuff with this podcast and allowing people to sort of edit and do things. I'm like, but like it has to happen because I have to be able to give my full self to the thing that it's actually important, which is the conversation or whatever the case, or the coach, you're like interacting with his players. Right. And so now it's come along where you can have all these different pieces, and I get it all costs money. I understand it all costs money. If you're not at a big program, it's tough. But now specifically in youth sports, it's sort of up to the parent, like to maybe find ways to have these other things in their life. But the coach has to have a broad enough scope because there's no excuse now to not to learn all of these things, to learn a little bit of the mental vocabulary, to learn a little bit of how to teach confidence or how to be calm or these things, right? There's no excuse. And there's also people like you who will come in and just help. Like they'll do it. There are tons of people who just want to help, not for a bunch of money, not for any money. They just want to help, and they want to help you, and they want to help this. And the coach has to be willing to broaden his horizon to be able to bring people in to best help his kids. And so there's really no excuse anymore. The coach who has to do all things, who has to wear all hats and all buckets, no longer exists. You specialize in a certain aspect, but you have a broad enough horizon to be able to reinforce some of the things that your experts are teaching your kids. So if my mental skills coach is teaching how to breathe, how to get back into the present moment, I'm reinforcing those skills because I also learn from them as well. And so it's a conjunction of everything. And I think coaches, especially at higher levels, youth is a little bit different. It's a lot of varying different parts and there's a lot of parent involvement. But at higher levels, I think that's what has to take part. And coaches have to they have to be willing to do that work because that's for the betterment of their athletes, not just the ones who are going to play pro, but the ones who are going to be fathers and salesmen and entrepreneurs and all these other things that majority of athletes go into once their playing careers are over.
Yeah, man. I like this so much. To have a broad scope. Yeah, that was your words. That's important. And we don't have to be deep. We can have just a little bit, and sometimes that's all you need. I just had somebody. He's a grown man. He's about my age, and he saw me at that event at the University of Maryland, and he said, "Yeah, Scott, I'm still doing that 5-minute routine that you told me about, a few years ago. I don't even remember what it was." But it made an impact on somebody, and that's important. And that's all it is for these coaches too. A youth coach, man, if you just have one tool, I'm very serious, and just use that tool over and over. For one thing, you'll get great at it. It's the old thing of don't fear the man with 10,000 kicks. You want to fear the man who has one kick, practice 10,000 times. And so you can just master something. Maybe it's going to be, how to breathe through your left nostril or your right nostril. Remember, I'm very serious. And just go with that, and your kids will remember that forever. And then, yeah, to your point of bring people in, there's no excuse. There's content galore out there. So, and sometimes that's a
Mm-hmm.
problem. It's like you feel overwhelmed. You don't know who to trust and all that. Just take a little bit at a time, and you'll recognize a voice of somebody that feels right to you, and just go with that. And then, it'll be a stepping stone to more things. And that's what I did. It was just a gateway to change my life in terms of what I like to read about, what I like to do. And we still have some work to do. I'm glad that you do this with your teams, Aaron, which is to incorporate overtly some type of awareness training, mental training, emotional training in the practice. So we've talked about this, just like you would have a batting station. We're going to have the emotion station. We're going to practice what it feels like to be up. We've won. What does that feel like? And even what does the word feel? That word is used so many times, it's lost its meaning. And I have to remind my clients, and I'll say, how do you feel? They'll bring up an issue. I say, how do you feel? I say, what do you feel? And they'll say, well, I feel happy about that. I say, no, that's not a feeling. Your feeling is a sensation in your body. Just teaching that concept to kids of, hey, we just had a disappointment. What is it that you feel? And they may say sad. Again, it's like, well, that's an emotion. Well, what do you feel in your body? Oh, yeah, I feel my heart feels like it has a weight on it, or there's a knot in my stomach. Oh, man. If you're a coach and you're listening and you just teach somebody how to feel into their body, you are a genius and you have changed society, because I promise you, you will change that person's life. When we don't acknowledge our body, we're missing out on the opportunity to really be fully human. And we're risking that in the case of a negative experience, or quote negative, that it will stick in the body, because that's how it works. If we don't process it through, don't let it have its natural life of feeling it for 90 seconds, they say, then the body will, not necessarily will, but it can hold on to it and resurface later on in the form of loss of performance in sports and, kind of dysfunctional human behavior that we see all the time. And again, I'm not perfect. I still have those as well.
What would you do next after you got an athlete to recognize the feeling of having a pit in his stomach, or that feeling of his heart being really heavy after a disappointment? Where would you go to next?
Yeah, so it depends on the situation, but in general, I like to use my favorite tool because it works. And when I say it works, what is it? So EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, also known as tapping. This is a really amazing tool that I've been working with for 15 years, and I'm certified in the use of this. And it is clinically studied. And that's the funny thing, is that, humans, we are great at creating solutions. And EFT is one of them. It's been around for about 35 years. We're not so great at implementing things that, even though they've been proven to be helpful. And so with EFT, there's over 120 clinical trials showing that it is effective and kind of produces the same results as cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the gold standard of psychology, except it does it at a much faster rate. I've seen a study that showed it taking 15 sessions of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's traditional things that psychologists use, to affect a measurable change or significantly measurable change in anxiety in a person, versus 3 sessions of EFT, the tools that I use. So as sports people, hey, we always want the best practices, the best drills, etc. And I view this in the same way, which is, this is more effective for more people, lasts longer, so call it more enduring, than traditional therapy. Why aren't we using this all over the place? And it is growing, still not mainstream. And so as a coach, I would do that. I would also just simply take a moment. If somebody could feel that thing on their heart, and I'd say, hey, let's just sit there. And I want you to, either with your eyes open or your eyes closed, just bring your awareness into the center of your heart. And let's just sit there and breathe for the next 30 seconds. And we'll do that. And what does that do? Well, it's been shown that if you can just let something be inside of you for a bit, it helps it to, I don't know what the right words are. We'll say process or dissipate or have its life of its own, get soaked into you, etc. It's when we ignore it that we run the risk of a block. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about what tapping is and why it works?
Yeah, definitely. So tapping it's called tapping as its nickname because we are using our fingers to kind of tap on specific points that are meridian endpoints. So in the meridian world, or the world of acupuncture, if you've gone to an acupuncturist, you've probably seen a chart on the wall. There are lines going down the person on the chart. Those are the meridians. And in the ancient world of Chinese medicine, they would say that life force, life energy flows through those meridians. It's important to keep them moving. All of that, I'm not an expert in, and that's the fun of EFT. I don't have to be. I don't need to have any knowledge of that stuff at all. I find it kind of fascinating that it has its ancient roots like that. But really, it is a mechanical process that helps us to quickly rewire around a situation that our system, call it brain, body, may perceive as negative, especially those ones that have stuck with us for a long time. Okay. So when we're tapping, you do it enough, and enough is just a subjective word here. It's different for everybody. We can quickly shift the neurotransmitters in our body to ones that are associated with feeling good. So when we have a negative experience or a negative memory of something that happened in the past, we recall it, our subconscious may recall it, and all of a sudden, like you said, the heart may beat like crazy. It's giving us a signal, we're in danger here. The reality is really not in danger. Nothing what we do, standing in front of 50,000 people playing baseball is not a danger. They can't hurt you, but we perceive it as such. So there's a reason that we do. Is it because somewhere in our life we were programmed to fear, fill in the blank, judgment, probably. If not judgment, it's I don't know. It could be a specific situation that happened in your life where large groups of people, you were embarrassed. Who knows? And the good news out of all of this when using tapping is that we do not have to be like a therapist. In fact, I want to make this clear. This is not therapy. And we are doing something to help reduce the negative charge around an old memory or an existing situation. Now, it may produce the same results as therapy, which is awesome. But when we're doing this, we are changing programming that's inside of us. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. So what does that mean? Let's say you've got a kid who all of a sudden is in a slump, and people would classically say, well, go take some more swings, or, it's okay, breathe, relax. And those are nice things to do, but sometimes it's just insufficient. And it's insufficient because that would be kind of like the software playing on top. Okay. We're a computer. We've got some software going. And we can try to tweak that software, but if the operating system underneath of it is defective, it doesn't matter what the software is. So the putting the hand on the back, patting and breathing, that's software. And underneath of it, we've got a broken operating system. The tapping gets to the operating system. And that's why I love to use it. It's so simple. It's so powerful. And the operating system is this deep programming that we were, it depends who you want to follow here. Either we brought into the world karmically, or we adopted, or we got inserted into us starting when we're inside of our mothers. We're picking up our mother's vibrations on fear and happiness and all these sorts of things. And that gets transmitted into us. And that continues to happen when we become outside of our mothers. when we are especially ages 0 to 6, our brain waves at that point are like an adult who's hypnotized. And we've seen that before, hey, you're a chicken at the count of 3, and they will cluck like a chicken. Well, kids are kind of the same way, is that they are great at absorbing information. Amazing. They are those sponges that people call. What they're not yet capable of doing, because their brains aren't ready, is to contextualize it in a way that makes sense. And so they can take in tons of information, and sometimes it'll just get created into these, wacky perceptions that it may not be reality to people outside, but to that kid, that's reality. And we carry those into our adulthood. And that's the thing that I'd like to work with myself and others with, is how can we get those programs that are no longer serving us out of the way, and then insert ones that do serve us. And one more thing on the science of this, because
Please.
this is very, very science-oriented technique, is that there is a little electrical signal that gets created when we tap on the human body. Whether it's this kind of tapping, it looks like this, very gentle, or it's qigong, where people are really beating on themselves. There gets created an electrical signal called a piezoelectric signal, and that is essentially taking mechanical energy and converting it into electrical energy. And if you've ever seen this cool experiment where in the dark you crush some quartz, the quartz will release light when you crush it. That's what we're talking about here. So you're taking mechanical energy, converting it into electrical energy, and that electrical energy travels through the fascia. And all of our body movement and body appreciation geeks who are listening to this, the fascia also keeps our muscles it's a net, keeps us kind of vertical, allows us to be structured. It's also a communications network, which is fascinating. It has a crystalline structure, and it allows the electrical signal to travel through the body as we're tapping and get to the amygdala in the back of our brain that houses both the emotions and memories. And so as we engage in an old memory of being scared of something, it's like opening the gateway, allowing that electrical signal into there, and it wraps itself around that, we'll call it that node of neural pathways associated with that old memory. And there's something very soothing about that to the brain. And so we've got the juxtaposition of an old negative experience being soothed with this electrical signal. And now all of a sudden, the chemistry around that issue changes, meaning instead of cortisol being pumped through our body, we're getting serotonin and GABA and other hormones that make us feel good. And the cool thing, let's keep the chain going. So the energy is changing the chemistry, then the chemistry changes our biology, so that we actually can grow cells in our body now that are in an environment of feel-good transmitters, feel-good chemistry. And that's very different than having cells growing in an environment of stress, cortisol. So for an athlete, back to being a coach again, you can help your team play better, feel better, and heal better, recover better, if we can just induce this kind of chemical change through this mechanical action. Yeah, so there's a lot there too. One more thing on that is that this technique is mechanical. It is not about a belief system. I do believe that mindsets are a great tool to have. They're very important. However, this technique that I just described, I keep showing here, is not about a belief system or any kind of mindset. You could just sit there. In fact, I do this sometimes during the day and just do this, and after, again, enough minutes, there will be a chemical shift and you will be able to feel it in yourself. You'll just be more relaxed.
Now, when it comes to this specific technique, you think this is something that an athlete could do in the midst of a game, or is this specifically for post-performance, say after maybe a hard loss or a tough game, or could this be done specifically for a baseball player in between at-bats or in the dugout, maybe after a bad at-bat or a bad error, or could it potentially be done on the field, or there's not enough time there? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love this question. It is actually it's anytime. And so in the world of physical training, the guy, Dr. Charlie Weingroff, and he patented or he perfected a saying of performance equals rehab and rehab equals performance. He's a doctor of physical therapy. And he's basically saying, hey, look, you're going to do the same kind of exercises, in his view, for performance as you are for rehab. And if you're trying to get rehab, you're going to do the same things as you do for performance. It's just this continuum. And same thing with the tapping technique is let's use it for kind of preparing to play. So pre-game, pre-game, meaning in your house, in your hotel room, or wherever you are, you can do this. As you're driving through traffic, if you're a coach and you're aggravated, just sit at the traffic light and start to tap. Just do it anytime, any place. Then, you're in game and something happens. And I would maintain that it should be used not just for when something goes wrong, but also for when something goes right. And the reason I say that is that there are people out there, and I might have been one of them as a player, where if things go really well, you're thinking, well, they can't continue. can't keep going good like this. And that might be a very deep subconscious thought. So, hey, you just hit 2 home runs. I might just be like, hey, just hit 2 home runs, And what you're saying is, I'm acknowledging I just had success. And guess what? I'm okay with success. We're getting that. And then after the game, absolutely. I would do the same thing, which is it could look like sitting around as a team. And I love this spot for just tapping and talking and just saying, we did a great job out there today on some things, some other things not. And I'd say to people, what were some of the challenges that you saw out there? What didn't you like? And some player might say, I know, I struck out 3 times. Okay, got it. What else? I got distracted by my parents in the stands, and I know I'm not supposed to do that. All right, great. And just keep going through that. And as we are acknowledging those things that we like and don't like, and tapping, again, it's just sending a signal to our mind-body system that all this stuff, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Because really it's helping you. It is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like that part where you said about, you can do it no matter what, after a good thing, after a bad thing, which really reinforces this idea of focusing on your process. Because I do this thing no matter what, because it's part of my routine. In between pitches, I do this no matter what, if I made a good throw or a bad throw, because I know what my routine is. I know what my process is. I'm focused on the execution of my process rather than the end result of that. And I do it no matter what. If I strike out 3 times, okay. Or if I hit 3 home runs. Now there's some stuff in there that, probably needs to be tweaked, but that's more about your approach and things like that, not about you as a person. And then you can look at your process. Did you have the same routine today? Did you get enough sleep? Like all of that stuff is important, but thinking about what to do, in between innings. You have a routine in between innings, especially if you're a pitcher, right? No matter how you did or how you didn't do, this could be part of your routine to center yourself, to keep yourself calm, to get yourself back into the present moment, all of that stuff. And so, because, a lot of the stuff with mental skills is invisible. It's like, do these sort of esoteric things and they'll help you. This is like a physical action that could benefit you almost immediately, like within 2 minutes. Is pretty immediate, I would say, because
that's right.
No other thing in sport where you can get results in 2 minutes. You got to go to the cages for 6 years before you figure out how to hit a ball. So
right. That's so true. That's so true. And you got on a couple things that I want to highlight, if I can remember them. One is that the tapping process is mechanical and visible. So while I love meditation and I meditate daily myself, and I've taught kids to meditate, the challenge with that is you don't really know what they're doing. when they're meditating. I think at the very least, if they're just sitting there kind of relaxed, that's a good thing, and that's perfectly fine. With the tapping, you can see that they are doing it, and unless they are some guru who's absolutely trying to use their human consciousness to block the positive effects of this tapping, you can be guaranteed that they are getting positive effects. And I want to say that again, is that, it is a mechanical process, meaning we are simply touching our body in these certain ways. And they've done blood work before and after on people. And it is like double-digit changes to the positive on the neurochemistry associated with our feeling good. And so as a coach, it takes the heat off of you. You don't have to have any, cognitive strategies to use with your kids on this. If you're this coach who's in the youth sports world, you're doing everything. You may not even have an assistant. You just want to keep it simple and powerful. And my filter that I like to use on things is I want to bring stuff to my clients that are at best life-changing and at worst a benign use of time. And this is definitely in that wheelhouse, except it's not a benign use of time. It's actually all positive because it's been shown, clinically studied. Even the federal government has approved the use of it for the treatment of veterans with PTSD in the VA hospital system. Federal government's slow, very slow to accept new things. And after 15 years of lobbying by the group that certified me, it is now an approved technique for this. By the way, way better technique than the system that the VA hospital system uses. And I hope that there will be more and more practitioners who will use this totally drug-free, no cost kind of techniques to help people, as opposed to solely relying on pharmaceuticals and talk therapy, which is what the VA hospital system has done in the past. To their credit, they are starting to look at new things like plant medicine and other leading edge techniques that I probably need to do some more research on before I speak on them. But getting easy to use, powerful tools in the hands of non-degreed people is the future of mental health delivery systems in the United States. And that's not my words. That's the words of the head of clinical psychology at University of Virginia, where I live. Okay. So those who are in the know recognize that licensed mental health care professionals, they are not going to be the answer. It's a numbers game. We've outstripped the supply of man hours with the demand of mental health issues out there. Again, if as young coaches of youth sports know that the National Institute of Mental Health says that between 40 and 60% of all adolescents and young adults, and that's up to age 25, can be diagnosed with a mental health issue. Okay. There's 8.5 million high school athletes. There's another 500,000 of college athletes, 9 million kids. And I'm sorry to say that there's studies out there that have shown that athletes are more susceptible to anxiety and depression than the general population. So let's stay on this upper end of that 40 and 60%. It's 60% of 9 million. It's almost 5.5 million kids that need help. And 1/3 of the counties in the United States don't even have one licensed psychologist. We've got ourselves a problem. And I challenge, when I get to be on stage, and I appreciate this stage here, I challenge coaches to say, if you think that your institution or your league or whoever is going to solve this mental health crisis that's in America, think again. It's going to be you, you or somebody like you, who are going to be able to have daily access to kids, or at least frequent access, and to do something, and something that's powerful. And that's why I really like to champion tapping, because it's easy and powerful. There are other techniques. I love it if somebody was teaching meditation and even relaxation, body awareness, all that stuff really matters. So thank you for letting me get on my rant.
Well, of course. I mean, that's basically in a nutshell, what you're doing with your company Champion Playbook, trying to incorporate mental health in a sports driven, performance driven world where I think that if we can make mental health, let's say, a little sexier, I think
Yeah.
that we can frame it in a way where it's not for people who are sick. Yes, of course, people have mental health conditions and all that other stuff, for a different chat. But mental health is not for the crazy, for the depressed. It's for the person who just wants to feel and be their best. And if we can get out in front of it, like you're talking about, and be a little more proactive and encourage these skills at like 7th and 8th and 9th grade, then there's just a better chance for these kids who get into sports or not to have a better grasp on handling and recovering from mistakes, how to feel calm in the moment when they have something big happening, a test, a conversation, a job interview. All of these skills. What can I do in the moment to be less overwhelmed, to get back into the present moment, to help me? How can I armor myself with these skills? And then, the big life stuff happens, death, sickness, all of this stuff. Okay, now can I handle those a little bit better because I have these prerequisite skills? That's all really what we're talking about. And kids in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they're capable of learning this stuff. Simply learning, okay, I can do this, I can take a deep breath in through my nose and out through my mouth. I can feel my body. I can write stuff down to get it out of my brain and onto a sheet of paper. Okay, that makes sense. I understand that. And now if they do it is another thing, but at least we're giving them some tools. What I've learned is that people will do it, they'll try it, but then 2 or 3 years down the road, they'll be like, oh, that's what he was talking about. And then they'll start doing it over and over again. But at least they have the information inside of them to pick out when they need to. And that's why I appreciate, the work that you're trying to do and are doing. It's not an easy task by any means, but I'm glad that we're in a community, you and I, that a lot of people are championing this sort of work. And it's cool to see because, I've been doing this sort of idea for 5 years now, and the shift is crazy good. We still have a lot of work to do, but we have to recognize that we've come a long way.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example of that. First off, 2 things. If anybody does not believe that this type of work would be beneficial for kids in school or in life, just look at the work that David Lynch, I believe I got his name correct. He was a Hollywood director long ago, had a series that was popular called Twin Peaks. And he is interested in meditation. He brought meditation to like the tough schools of Chicago, South Side Chicago, and predominantly minority kids there, low income, and got this program instituted where they meditate every day in school. Lo and behold, all the results, went in the positive direction. And I'm being a little, jaded here and sarcastic, but I just want everyone to know that it can be done. It can be done. You just have to have somebody who believes in it and just be that person. And yep, you're going to get made fun of it by others at some time. So what, And if you are, then you can tap on that or breathe into your body or whatever you need to do. And that's just part of the journey. And the last 5 years, definitely big change. So, when I first started, I was timid talking about it. It's like, I did this weird stuff, I was a traditional sport coach and, et cetera, et cetera. But I just recognized that it started to work and I started to talk more and more. And now I tell anybody who I can. And they always say, oh, that's cool. Some people are ready for it. Some people are not. And an example of that is at this American Baseball Coaches event. After I was introduced ad hoc, which was so kind of the gentleman who ran the show. And he's like, oh, I wonder if, Scott Fox is in the audience. He really is amazing with this technique called tapping, and he can help your players, deal with slumps and, just life in general. And I had about 4 or 5 coaches come up to me afterwards and chatted about it. And I thought, that's really cool. And 2 observations. One is that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. I wouldn't have been introduced. This guy up front probably wouldn't have been comfortable saying this guy does tapping. And then the other coaches, they wouldn't have been ready, at least 5 of them. Now, the other side of it is, so 5 out of 100, 95% still really were not interested. And I just have to accept that they're not quite there yet, try not to judge it too harshly. because I'm sure there was a time I wasn't there either. I know there was a time, by the way, I was very skeptical of all of this 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked at it. I thought, this is just crazy. It's a rip off. All this stuff was coming up. I was getting triggered by things. And now things are different. And I appreciate what you are teaching your young people, Aaron, and other coaches too. There's some amazing coaches out there. So hopefully the next 5 years will be even more dynamic. And I know they will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to touch on one more thing that I think is important before I let you go, and that's the work that you and a couple of colleagues are doing for the Ukraine folks. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, thank you so much. I love this work. It is a pro bono effort called P.U.R.E. That's providing Ukrainian resilience and empowerment. We started doing this work about 18 months ago. And my colleagues actually started right as the war began, which unfortunately we're coming up on 2 years in February. And we use the same techniques that I use with athletes with Ukrainians. And so we jump on a Zoom call every other Friday now. And this is on there's a Facebook group, or if anybody's listening and actually just wants to observe, where we've had guests to come look at us before. And we jump on a Zoom call. It's usually a small group of Ukrainians, usually 8 or under. And they often are repeat people. In fact, as a core, they're all in. They come every single time. And we do, I'd say, about 20 minutes of sharing. And so they get to voice what's on their minds and their hearts those days. And we have a translator. One of my colleagues is a professional translator in Ukraine, and she speaks multiple languages. She speaks Russian, obviously English, German, French. I think that's her bailiwick right now. And it's a fascinating thing. And, I'll get back to the fascinating thing in a moment here, but after the sharing piece, we'll do tapping. And to see my translator in particular tapping and translating, and then having somebody in Ukraine tapping as they tune into their body, listening to my words being translated, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. And it's not just the process that's beautiful, it is results as well. These people are under, stress is too pale a word. What do you feel when you have rockets going over your apartment building, killing people in your town, and the fear for your child's life? You need tools. is such an understatement. And so we provide this tool of tapping, and we do some breath work with them as well. And looking to help more people. If we have any listener who knows a Ukrainian or is just simply interested in what we're doing and would like to learn it themselves so they can help people, I hope you will reach out to me or reach out to Aaron, and he'll contact me. And I'm in touch with some amazing people around the world now, who are also trying to help many people around the world. I'll confine it to Ukraine for now. And if anybody's out there listening and wants to join that band of like-minded people who are doing this kind of pro bono work, man, I hope you'll reach out. Yeah. And also, one more thing on this, because I love what we started with, which is that sports should be more than just the game. It's like, at the end of the day, how did this Little League coach do trauma relief work for the Ukrainians? And I love that journey for myself. It's not over. I don't know what I'll end up being and doing in the future. I think, though, that it is just a great statement that anybody can do this. You can use sports as a platform to help yourself, help the world. The only issue is, do you want to? And if you can think about it and say, yeah, I want to, I just feels too overwhelming, that's okay. It's the what that's important now. Just know what you want out of the sports. Don't worry about the how. The how will take place. Let the universe take place. Let God, let spirit, whatever it is you want to say, take control of that. It's the what piece that's the most important.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for your time, your attention, your effort, your energy. where should people go if they do want to reach out?
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. So presently, I do have individual clients. I work with individual athletes of all ages and post athletes. I'm working with somebody right now who's a former professional athlete and just has some life issues, and that's great too. So if anybody would like to work on something like that, or if you are a team-oriented person, either you're a coach, general manager, etc. I work with coaches too. I've had the pleasure of working at the university level before with coaching staffs and players, and I love that as well. And I can be reached via my website, which is as in THE, championplaybook.com. My email address, you can come directly to me, is scott@coachscottfox.com. I'm also on Instagram at coach_Scott_Fox. And I'm on LinkedIn. Appreciate it very much, Aaron. Thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. All of those are.
One more plug.
Go ahead.
One more plug here is I was invited to speak December 15th for the Virginia Baseball Coaches Association. And I will be speaking on the favorite topics here of sport performance meets mental health. And so if anybody's here in Virginia, it's going to be in Fairfax. And if you look it up online, you'll get all the information you need.
Beautiful. Love that. Yeah, that's awesome. Everything linked in the show notes below. Scott, thank you, man. Glad we're connected and happy to see you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But above all else, most importantly, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.